Here's a request from another one of our subscribers. This person says, how do you paint water in high waves? I'm enamored by the masters and their renditions of boiling seas and would love to try. I just don't know where to begin. 3 words: movement, value, color. I get so many requests how to, but there are no magic formulas that are always going to tell you how to do everything you see. If you learn to see in terms of color and value and movement and other things too, then you can figure out how to paint almost anything you're looking at. Yeah, you can't do that in one session, but let me give you some guidelines here. And I think if you follow these guidelines, you'll find that not only are you able to communicate or express high waves and crashing waves and the kind of thing that the subscriber asked for, but other things too. Now, I said movement, value, color. Look at the movement first of all. People don't realize that in painting we have visual movement, and the visual movement can also be determined by the actual movement we see in the subject itself. So if you look, let me take the color wheel down just for a moment. Look at these two. The movement here is really visible. So you see the movement, how it curves this way. Well, that tells you that at one stage in the painting, your brush is going to move that way. But what does the brush have on it? And how do you prepare it? That comes to the next one. And that is observing what are you really seeing in the way of color and value. Now, you see, we've got 2 different scenes here of crashing waves. The light is going, or the light condition is going to determine how you see this. It's going to determine the color. Under an overcast light, you're not going to see the color quite so clearly. But when the sun is out and you have a direct light, you're going to see that color a lot more clearly. That's because the ocean surface, the water surface, is reflecting the sky. And it has depth too, but it's reflected. Both those things are influencing the color that you see. And there's the first thing. So also where you are in relation to that sun is going to determine how you see these things. So the best thing to do is to go through all that and just look at what are you actually seeing. And I want to use this one as an example. I'm not going to do a whole painting of this. I'm just going to show you how you can go about that and actually interpret any crashing wave you see. So what are we seeing right in here in the way of color? And that's where the color wheel comes in. If you learn to use the color wheel to locate your colors and to mix your colors, you cut through a whole lot of trial and error, and your painting can go a lot faster. So what are we seeing here in the way now? This is how to do that. Hold the color wheel up and look through it. Now, that's the reason I like to cut the innards out of a color wheel. It's because when you're out in plein air, you can hold it up like this and you can turn it, close one eye, and you can align the colors on the color wheel with the colors you're looking at. So that's the major key for you. Learn how to use the color wheel. Well, let's just see what are we looking for there on the color wheel. Now, I'm seeing right in here when I focus on the color, not on the fact that it's wave, but on just the color. I'm seeing colors up here that change as they go down into here. Now we could say there's light, some light reflecting in here. All this is falling into shadow because the sunlight is back there somewhere, or maybe up, but this is curving over and it's creating a big shadow in there, and that makes that much darker. And then within that value area of being in the dark range, you see one color changing into another. Then how do we identify that? That's where the color wheel comes in. So you might say blue. Well, if we put it on blue, we see actually it is greener than the blue on the color wheel. And so you see it would fall, if we could see a color wheel that continued from blue-green over to blue, like the rainbow does, you would see then bluer or greenish blue. And how would we get that? Well, we might start out with a blue-green and use a little bit of color magic, because look what it's going into right here. It's going into more of a blue-violet. And we can see that right here. Here's the blue-violet, and you see this is very, very much leaning towards blue-violet. Now, when you get to know your tube colors, you discover that two colors, when they mix together, do things to each other. All right, let's start. Let's start, and let me walk you through that little process. So if we started with blue-green, we have a color, blue-green, that comes out of the tube. We have it in phthalo green, and we also have it in the Rembrandt brand of Viridian. Be careful about that, because other Viridians don't do this. If we start out with a color that's transparent, we can make this happen. And so a good way to build a process for yourself is to just simply start by, first of all, comparing. Put a blue-green on the palette, and then put it maybe on the back of your palette enough and compare it, and you see it leans more towards blue than it does blue-green. All right, so that would say then that we need to move towards blue on the color wheel. And one answer to that would be to go with ultramarine blue. Now I'm going to put a little bit of ultramarine blue right here, because or cobalt blue would do that too. But then I want to show you something. I want to pull a little bit of ultramarine blue in here and just mix it into that blue-green. And let me wipe off the palette knife, and let's raise the value. You can see this is much darker than this, so I'm going to put just a little bit of white, and I'll put it right here. And I want you to watch something magic happen. When I put a little bit of white in that, we can see already that is leaning towards what we're seeing right there. You see how close that is? And I probably put just a little bit too much blue. Let's put a little bit more green down. So that's the way you read the color. You determine what is closer to on the color wheel. And then if you see right there, I have that color right there. Now, as it's moving from the blue-green, and we can see at least two values of that, which I will show you how to do in just a moment. We can see now as that blue-green is moving down, it's moving more towards blue-violet. Well, that would say add violet. Now, look what happens here. We have on the color wheel often tell you what to do. We have blue-green here, and we have red-violet there. We also have violet here. And so if my idea is right, we should be able to mix either violet into the blue-green, or red-violet into the blue-green, and get pretty close to what we have right here. Let's see if that will work. So I'm going to go back to the original blue-green right here, and let's get some red-violet. Now this red-violet that I picked up here is called quinacridone violet. Again, it's a transparent dark color. If you start with a transparent dark color, you have a wider range of possibilities for mixing. So to mix this blue-violet right here, let me show you something. We'll pull a little bit of this red-violet in here, and we're going to see some magic happen. And I will pull just a little bit. There we go, right in there. We can see that turning blue-violet. And if I put a little bit of white in it so we can see it a little bit better, you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. Just mix a little bit of that. There it is, right in there. You see coming up that blue-violet right there, as a result of mixing red-violet and blue-green. And we can see it. Well, the value is too dark there. Let's get it closer to the value. That's another thing that people don't realize sometimes, is that a lot of times if you're not getting the right color, it could be that it's not the right value. Let's see if that's closer. There we go. That's much closer. Still needs to be a little bit darker. And that also tells us what we'll need to do when we get to actually rendering that. There you go. It's right in that area there. Now the third thing, it's not just the crashing wave, but it's the colors that we see down here reflecting into that water that's moving in a different direction. So that tells us this is, if you look at that a little more closely right here, you can see that is much lighter, and it also is doesn't have as much color in it as this does. And that tells us when it doesn't have as much color in it or as much hue in it, that it needs to have a complement added to it. All right, if we go back to the blue-green, we see the red-orange is a complement, so I'm going to show you something else here. And now let's get this closer to the value we're looking at right there. This is the Rembrandt Transparent Oxide Red, which is a wonderful red-orange. That is acts as a wonderful complement with blue-green. Now, if I go back over in here, and let's do it this way. Let's go over in here and let's mix a little bit of this into this. Then we will see that changing. We'll see that color changing to very much closer to what we have right here. Get just a little bit more of that blue in it, but see, I saw that going a little bit bluer, and let's try that. So you see, we're in that area right there. So it doesn't take many colors. I mean, you don't need a whole string of specific colors coming out of the tube in order to get the colors you need. All right, so the color, finding the color, and finding the value, and then what do you do with them? One of the best ways to approach something like this is to start with the dark first of all. And so let's say if we started with the darkest part, which is the blue-violet, or the the violet here, which ends up being blue-violet. That's what I meant to begin with. So then what it would do is come up into the blue-violet mixture and get a mixture that is pretty close to what we have there in value and in color. And then as we stroke that on, we can begin to stroke it in the movement that we see right here. So we could stroke it more like this. As we begin to stroke it on, we can stroke it more like that, and we already begin to create a movement that's very close to the movement we see right there. Now I will do just enough of it to show you how this works, and then you can see as that blue-violet goes up, then you go up. As it comes down, you come down. Make your brush do what you see the image doing, and if it tapers out like that, then you taper out, so that you are getting a start on translating what you're seeing right there. Now you can move gradually from that blue-violet into the blue or green at the higher value. So I'll just keep the blue-violet in the brush, and I'll pick up just a little bit of this mixture right here, and I'll begin to work this right in beside it, still letting the brush move. See, like it's moving here. Let the brush move the way I see that moving, and gradually I can move up the value scale, and I can gradually, by blending this, you do see it blended there, you see those soft edges, so I can blend this into that and continue to move the brush as I see that moving, keeping the brush moving like I see this moving, and so forth. All right, so we got that, a nice little blend there. Now at this point I would want to wash the brush so I have more control over the value. Now I'm going to go back to my original mixture. Remember, we're going here from this, the lighter, we're showing the lighter portion here against the darker. So this is all that blue-green, but it's still a very dark value. So I think it's probably safer if I just pull some of this blue-green over a little bit, and I'll just put it right over here, and add remember to that blue-green we added enough ultramarine blue into it to get that quality of the blue-green we're seeing, and then we change the value of that with white, And I know people say white makes it look chalky. No, not if you control it, it doesn't. You don't add like 10,000 brush loads of white. You just put some white in your brush and ease into it. And so I'll have the white here. I'm going to be pulling it against the brush down here. I'm going to ease into that. Now you see as I pull the brush into that, I can see it change in value. And if I, instead of just trial and error, going ahead and hitting this, if I compare what I've got there in my brush to what's right here, you see I realize I'm pretty close in that range. And what do I do there? I simply let the brush move like I see it moving there. So, and if we can see this movement starts here and it kind of goes down, and then we see the movement next to it starts there. Let's load some more. Starts there and then goes down like that. And put enough paint in the brush so that you don't have to stroke too much. And you see already I'm beginning to get exactly what I saw right there, what I'm seeing right there. Now, I'm not going, our quick tips are designed to be short so that you don't have to watch like 30 minutes or an hour in order to be able to grasp an idea and play with it. So I'm just going to do just enough here to show you how that works, and then you take it forward and find yourself going to the ocean, observe the waves from the ocean, or let's go into Pixabay or Pexels.com, either one of those where we have uncopyrighted photos available, and choose one and just use it for practice. All right, so now here I have a darker. Up there we have the darker color. That was a little too dark, so let's just knock that down in value a bit. All right, here we have a darker color. What we can do there, exactly what the movement is doing. Let the brush pull down like that, and we see that we then begin to interpret what we're seeing right up there. And I'll do just a little bit more of that and then show you the light thing so you see how that works. Now if we then make the edges move in the same direction you're moving, you see them moving here, the edges against the white there. Down here, we see all of this against the foam at the top and what's going on at the bottom. Now what we see going on at the bottom there is something like, well, it's that grayer color I showed you there. So then I'll go over here and let's get the value right first of all. I just need this blue-green, and let's get the value. We'll put some white right over here so you can watch how this works. Just adjust the value in the brush like I'm doing right here. Now if I get the value right, let's see. Okay, the value seems right there. Now I also need to get the value right here, and that's what a lot of people fail to do. They'll get the value right of one color, but then they'll reach into a darker or lighter value of another color, and then it changes the value and it sort of goes south. So let's see, that's probably close enough to value right there. Now I'll just pull those together, just enough of that in this in order to turn it gray. Let's have just a little bit more of that blue back in it, and let's get that darker now by pulling it up here. Let's put the dark on first. Alright, so we add that dark. Got that a little bit too. I need to add just a little bit more blue back in it. And you can see you can do that. Alright, so let's see, let's pull the dark in there first, and we'll just, now I'm making this move. My brush is moving the way I see this, and I'm doing the darker part first. So that is another key of doing the foamy water at the bottom, is to put the dark on first. The darker part that you see, because you see two distinct values there. So I'll just put that on first. All right. Now let's get the lighter part. For that, I'm going to pull the paint out of the brush, or pull the wet part of the paint out of the brush, and move into the light. And let's just see just how light is that light. Let's not assume that it's pure white, because it's not. And see, that is just too light. Let's put a little bit of that red violet into it and the red orange, and let's get it leaning a little bit more towards blue, and let's see, is that about the same value? That looks very, very close. Now again, we use the same motion that we see moving here. So we don't try to copy, we get the sense of the movement, and we make our brushes move in that sense of the movement. And make it a little bit lighter in some places. We see it a little bit lighter in some places and a little bit darker in others. All right. Now, let's see, one little adjustment that I need to make up there. And that is we need this to sort of blend right there. The edges this sort of blends back, and there again, I'm allowing the brush to pull that color in. You see how we're doing that right there? Just allow the brush to pull this color, this value of the color in there. Now, and then of course the top waves, somebody's going to complain if I don't show you how to do that. Well, we're doing what we see. Now we see a sort of splash there, and I'm just going to use some white here, and I'll tint it just a little bit. And so when we say splash, you can just hit the canvas, push the brush down and sort of make it splash like that. You see that? And you get that splash. Just push, load the brush with paint like that, and if you just hit the canvas and push and pull back, you can create that sense of splash. Now, a lot of times within that splash, we might see a trickle of water. I don't see it right there, but we see right there a trickle of water coming down, and you can just sort of touch it and pull very lightly. See, like that, and you have it. So I think maybe I've given you enough clues there of how to think that through. If you don't try to follow a formula, don't think that because you're trying to copy what I'm doing here that it's going to teach you how to do splashing waves. But if you follow that process of figuring out the color, figuring out the value of the color, and then the movement, how's the brush going to move? Because, and that will be always dictated by, not dictated, you can follow the movement that you see is going on in the water itself, and that will be your clue as to how to move that brush. Give that a try and see if you don't find that much more satisfactory than following the formula. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.